It's been a very eventful offseason so far for the New York Islanders. We bring in Gary Harding of Isles Talk and the Isles Booster Club to break down the best moves and the impact that this offseason has had on the Islanders. We've got that and a whole lot more next on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. Again, we've got Gary Harding of Isles Talk and the Isles Booster Club. Let's get right to it with Gary. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show from Isles Talk and the Islanders Booster Club, the one, the only, Gary Harding. And Gary, great to see you.
Same here. We should rename the show All Mathew All the Time. We just got to add Barzal, and we got a three-peat here.
Yeah, we have a lot of Matthews, or one Mathew, but yes.
Yes.
Spelling doesn't count. We'll go with it.
Exactly.
We'll go with it. And look, we have got a lot to discuss here today. Let's start off with your thoughts on this offseason. All the changes, starting with Lou being out, Matthew Darche coming in, the Dobson trade, the winning the lottery. It's been a rather eventful last 3 months here.
Yeah, and usually you don't put the words Islander and eventful in the same sentence, but it's worked. Like you said, between Mathew coming in, winning the lottery, he has a vision, and I think it was necessary after these years. And again, thanks to Lou for what he did to turn the organization in a better direction. But I think the time had come to switch the gear a little bit. And I think having Mathew, who spent the majority of his career obviously working the minor league side of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and we all know what that organization has done, especially bringing people up from within, up from the Syracuse Crunch as well. You knew he was going to be ready to take off and run. And with obviously getting the lottery pick and then doing what he did in prior to it with the Noah Dobson trade, you knew that he wasn't going to sit on his laurels. And Islander fans know from past free agent frenzies and trade deadlines when the Islanders didn't do anything and everybody was freaking out in Islander country. Yes, he's done some things. Could there have been a lot more? Probably. But I think with the state that the team was in, the cap situation, who he had to sign, what he had to take care of, I think he did a tremendous job. And of course, I think you and I or somebody off the street in a wheelchair could have made Matthew Schaefer the #1 draft pick. That was a perfect no-brainer. But then to get Mr. Eklund and Mr. Atchison on, in addition, and guys that were ranked 9 and 10 to slide to 16 and 17 to get, I mean, his drafting, and especially with some of the other draft picks he selected, I think he hit a home run. And it's been a long time since we said that in a draft. And then from there, the free agency. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Were you surprised that Noah Dobson was traded?
No, I really wasn't. Just knowing of the fact that from what we were hearing and what he wanted, he's a nice player. I'm not negatively said anything about him, but yes, we all know he struggled. But when you're struggling on a year, the year that your contract is done, and you're expecting the team to give you a 275% raise, I don't think they're going to do that. And everybody said it was amicable, and I'm sure it was. And being his Atlantic Canadian heritage, I think it's good for him to go to the Blue, Blanc, and Rouge. He grew up a Habs fan, so that'll be good for him. But to me, even though we know about the 2 picks we got, I am really liking getting Emil Heineman in that deal. He's going to be a sleeper. To me, he fits the 4th line perfect. He's got a penchant to score. He's got some power play goals in him, so you can put him on PP2. So I do like the deal. I think Dobson and Cale Hudson will be a unbelievable 1-2 combo for many, many years to come in Montreal. But I really think both sides did well on the deal, and it's one of those deals that you're happy about because the players are happy, the teams are going to be happy, and both will get their victories from it.
Every Canadiens fan and the hosts of Locked On Canadiens, everybody is saying how much the Islander fans are going to fall in love with Heineman. And I think he'll bring back some of the tone setting that the identity line used to have a few years back.
Exactly. And then you just fast forward the fact that Matthew Darche signed Mark Gatcomb to that 1-year deal. And now it's going to be, truthfully, a dogfight for that 3rd spot between him and Kyle McLean. And both of them, they leave everything on the ice. They play so hard. I mean, Gatcomb was probably the best feel-good story of the team this year.
Yeah.
With the exception maybe of Holmstrom's great year. So yeah, it's gonna be quite an interesting camp. Judging how that 4th line is going to work out.
What, out of all the moves that Matthew Darche made, what one stood out as the best in your mind?
I love the Jonathan Druoin deal. Nice price. Everybody's saying, yeah, he's got almost a point a game pace in the last year and a half. But then everybody says, oh, well, he's playing with Nathan MacKinnon. That's great. He is playing with Nathan MacKinnon, but he's going to be playing on a line with Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal. What's wrong with that? Yes, it may be a smaller scale, but it's the same kind of talent in front of him. And again, another person capable on the power play. And we all Islander fans know for the last decade and a half what's been the problem with this team that's given fits game after game after game. It's the power play. So you got Heineman on the 2 side. You got Drewan on the other side. Yes, you lost Noah Dobson, but you got Pulock who's capable of doing things. You got Romanov who's capable. So I think it'll be better. But you've improved your power play, in the numbers, and now you got to see if it happens on the screen and on the stat sheets. But I like Jonathan Druoin. I think he finally got his confidence. Unfortunately, sometimes Quebecers don't do well in Montreal. We all know that.
A lot of pressure.
Exactly. So he got out of there and he proved himself. Now he's got another chance to prove himself even better, that he can do it without Nathan MacKinnon on his right side.
And one of the things I loved about the Druoin deal, 2 years. No disrespect to Lou, but I think if Lou was here, it would have been 7 years with a no trade clause, and that would have been a mistake. It's
a show me, just like Simon got. He got a show me deal. Even though Simon got 20 goals, had a great year, you could have signed him to $7 million too. You could have put him there, but you know what? You're telling him, you're giving him a purpose. You're giving him a foundation to go hit and say, look, we know you're good. You'll get paid. Give us 25, 28 goals this season. Don't worry. We'll take good care of you. Same thing with Drewan. He's still what, 27, 26, 27 years old. So he's still got some meat to play in the league. So give him that show me time. Do it. We'll take care of you.
What move that Matthew Darche made is the most questionable in your mind?
Questionable. Well, I think I'll put a question mark on the Riddick deal, because obviously we don't know the situation with Semyon Varlamov. He didn't play obviously from January on, and you got to have somebody You got Tristan Lennox, you got Tikkanen, you're going to have, you don't have really, you just signed actually a guy, I think from Scranton or one of the other Pennsylvania teams today, to an AHL contract, but you don't have anybody really that's worthy enough to take that 1B spot up on the show. Riddick won you 15 games there with the Kings last year. So he's capable. He's capable of 25 wins. So he's got the legs to be able to handle it. It's a $1 million deal. So it's not going to be the end all be all. If Varley is okay, then that's fine. You took a chance, see what happens. But I think it's a good insurance policy, and I can see the Islanders carrying 3 goaltenders to start the season.
It is a possibility depending on Varlamov's health and readiness.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely see. All right, we've got a lot more to discuss here on today's show. Matthew Schaefer just on another podcast, and it was very entertaining. We're going to talk about some of the things he said and your impressions of Matthew Schaefer, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And I love the fact that this app allows me to manage my money day to day and have everything in front of me at one time. And if you're sharing your finances with someone, Monarch helps keep both of you on the same page. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So, Gary, Matthew Schaefer on the Spit and Chicklets podcast on Tuesday, and I'll tell you, this kid's entertaining. I will say that for him. But I just love some of the things that he said. Let's even start with this. How great is it that Islanders players can now be on podcasts and be a little bit more out there, whereas in the past they could not?
Yeah, again, another feature of Lou's rules that are no longer gone. Yeah, I mean, just I didn't get to see the whole thing. I watched about maybe 75-80% of it this morning, but I just, with every interview I see between, getting at the draft, Good Morning America, where every place he's been so far, it's just amazing to put in your mind that kid is only turning 18 on September 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know obviously the story of what he's gone through, but to have that presence of mind at that age, I look at myself, no way was I that close at 17. I mean, I was okay, but not to that level. I mean, he's, so I think they mentioned on a podcast, he's 17 going on 30.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that not only was he very eloquent, but he digged at Bissonnette so badly. He ripped him a new one about 6 or 7 times. And Bissonnette was, you could tell he was genuinely surprised. I think he knew he was going to get something with him, but I don't think he realized that the level of how he ripped them apart. And, it just goes to show that this kid's got everything lined up, that he's going to be prepared. Whether you see number 48 wearing a blue and orange jersey or he's back in Erie next season, this kid is going to be ready to do whatever it takes at whatever level he's at to be the best he can be, not only on the ice, but as well as off. And he represents himself, his family, and his teams with excellence and an ability that I rarely see out of a kid his age.
Yeah. And I love, the fact is Biz has dissed the Islanders so many times over the last couple of years that Schaefer is sticking up for the organization and just giving him a little push back now and again during that interview. I just think it speaks volumes about the fact that he sees the big picture.
He definitely does. And he didn't need Butch Goring to help him either. Because we all know the fights that little fights that growing on between him and Biz. But, it just reinforces the fact that, the sky is the limit for this kid. And to him to come out and say, I want to be on Long Island for the rest of my life. You don't say those things at his age and his level. I mean, the closest I can see that of having a connection, if you will, and I'll use my wife as the connection for it. But when she met Josh Bailey, when Josh got drafted, again, an 18-year-old kid, she's over at Iceworks. He's meeting a bunch of people, and Josh came to basically her and asked, and you are, it's something it takes you back because you don't expect it. And I think Matt's the type of guy that fits that role. I mean, he was genuinely, you could see it in his eyes. And I'm watching at the scrimmage last Wednesday, and I'm watching from a distance, and you could see his eyes up so big, just taking everything in and just watching all this stuff and knowing, he's coming to an environment where people immediately fell in love with him. And that's a great thing to have, going into your freshman year in the NHL.
What impression did you get at the scrimmage seeing him on the ice for the first time?
Very, very understanding of the game, very aware of his surroundings. When I look at a scrimmage like that, I don't tend to look at the scoreboard. I don't tend to look at what points they got, especially looking at defensemen. I was watching his feet most of the day because I know he's had to be able to skate a little bit, without contact, obviously, because of the collarbone injury that he suffered at the junior championships. But I like the fact that when there was one or two times where he got beat, but it didn't look like he was totally, disheveled by it. He was able to get his range back and get back on the play. His side to side, his quick turns you could see they're elite. And that's, when I did my show a couple weeks ago with Shane Malloy, that's what he was trying to tell us. He said, just watch the kid's feet, watch what he does off the puck, and you can see the awareness. And you don't see that. You see that out of guys like a McCarr, who they're relating him to. You see that kind of awareness. And again, that's, if you get that at that age, you've got something, and I will obviously admit that, before the draft, we were all hoping for James Hagens. We were all, he was originally number one and everything else. And, it would have been a great marketing tool for the Islanders to get him. And I'm sure they tried and didn't. But you know what? I think they've got an even bigger one with Matt Schaefer. And, showing it from all his, interviews and what he said on Spit and Chicklets on how he's going back to work with Mark Giordano and working on everything he needs to do. I have no doubt in my mind that this kid is going to do everything he possibly can to have that jersey on, that blue and white jersey on in October.
Do you think he should start this season in the NHL? And if he does, what role do you see him playing as a rookie?
I wish I could put my crystal ball out there because we all know that there are 6 capable NHL defensemen right here, right now. So we were talking about Mathew before earlier. To me, I still think we're not done yet. Obviously, you see all the moves made on July 1. July 2, you get a couple. By July 3rd, they're in the cottages in Ontario somewhere. They'll forget about things till mid-July, early August, and it'll start. But the way the cap is situated now, we're pretty close to it. I think there's a couple of moves that might be made to do something to improve. And if that happens, if a defenseman gets moved, he could slot in at 6. You know, I think there's a lot of mistakes that can happen if you bring a kid in and you don't necessarily play him. If you're going to bring him, you got to play him.
Yep.
But I feel his maturity, he'll be able to handle it. Will he get beat once or twice on a move? Yeah, he's 18. But you know what? I really think there's a chance he's going to make it. And it's not a biased statement. I just think that his determination is gonna exceed expectations.
You know, I agree
with the decision hard. Sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all. I agree with you that, you know, if he makes the team, he's got to play. And I said the same thing about Isaiah George, that the worst thing you could do to Isaiah George or Matthew Schaefer right now is have him sit in the press box most nights.
Mm-hmm.
They've got to develop, and the only way you grow as a player is to be on the ice, whether in George's case, whether he's in Bridgeport or on the big club. You know, look at what happened with Samuel Bolduc, where he was the 7th defenseman for the better part of a year, and his development kind of stalled.
Yeah, and he's in LA now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think from what I heard, again, Isaiah George did a very nice job when he went back to Bridgeport. I think the experience, you know, that was thrusted upon him way quicker than anyone thought was going to happen, did a wonder for his game. And you saw it at the scrimmage. You know, him, I wanted to see the maturity level and see how he handled himself with the other kids. And you could see he wasn't a man amongst men, but you could see how he handled himself and how a lot of guys did as a result of it. And that's what I also heard about in camp, is that, you know, him being the resident expert, if you will, the resident old timer in there, I think kind of helped. And he's got a shot too. You know, you gotta say that the things that Matthew Darche has done, some of the signings, even the free agent signings for Bridgeport and stuff like that, he's got to fill the holes in there. And I think with some of the kids that are coming up in the next couple of years that are playing college hockey right now that came out of the U.S. developmental program, there is a pipeline, believe it or not. You know, yeah, Bridgeport had one of the worst seasons in AHL history last year, but you know what? It's not going to be all bad next year. And there's kids that are ready to come. So the future's not as bad as everybody thought it was going to be.
Well, a lot has happened. A lot has happened in the last few months to make that possible. All right, we've got more to discuss on today's show. We'll talk a little bit about what's happening at Bridgeport and maybe the future of the Bridgeport Islanders. It may not be in Connecticut. We'll talk about that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. We are back with Gary Harding of Isles Talk and of the Islanders Booster Club. Always great to have Gary on the show. And I mean, we have a new coach in Bridgeport. We have some new players as well. I mean, obviously with Matthew Darche, it's going to take time to put his imprint on the team, both the NHL team and the AHL team. But at least with Darche, I think he stated in his opening press conference that building things up at the AHL level is going to be a priority.
Absolutely. You know, that's where he got his smelling salts from. He got it from the AHL. And Syracuse has always been a power in the Eastern Conference. I mean, I know they won the Calder Cup at least once, so under their tutelage. So we all know how Tampa has built their team from within. So he's going to try to do that same kind of game plan. And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how Bridgeport works out this year. You know, crowds are sparse. It's tough. You know, I mean, they've got a good, solid, small fan base, but you know, having a season like they had last year, it's not gonna help them out. And we can talk about that going on. But I know that's going to be Matt's biggest concern, and still has Chris Lamoriello to work with him and try to build that Bridgeport organization up.
Obviously, there are rumors that the team could be headed to Hamilton, Ontario, leaving Bridgeport. Does that concern you at all? What are your feelings about a possible move? Because all the Islanders have said is no comment, so they're not denying it at this point.
Right. I'll tell you, on a personal note, I've been to what used to be called the Cops Coliseum in Hamilton, Ontario. They've played World Cups there. The World Cup of Hockey in the 80s were played there. The Canada Cups were played there. It's a great building. I was actually there for an Islanders in 1994. They played an alternate site game there.
Yes.
Against the Montreal Canadiens. I was there in Cops Coliseum. The thing about Hamilton is, as anybody may not know, it's halfway between Buffalo and Toronto. So you're going to have the Leaf fans that can't spend their sacrifice of their firstborn male child to get tickets to go to Scotiabank Arena. You're going to get the people that don't want to spend $200 to see a second-rate team in Buffalo. So what are they going to do? They're going to go that 45 minutes in either direction to Hamilton to spend $25, $30 to see an AHL team. They're spending $300 million to rebuild that arena, a lot more than they did for the Pig Coliseum that they cleaned up. But it's a great arena. It's a great fan base. And right now, when you have an organization that is struggling to get 1,500 people in a building, as guys that want to be in the show, that's not the environment for them to be in. So, the talk of moving them to an updated facility, which is near NHL capable, they're going to make it smaller obviously for this, but it's still an NHL capable arena with NHL capable fans rooting you on. I think compared to two, I'd go to Hamilton in a heartbeat. But here's my plan. This is the Gary Harding exclusive, and we'll talk about it on my show tomorrow night too.
Nice.
Take the Worcester Railers organization in the ECHL, our affiliate, and move them down I-91 down to Bridgeport. I think it's a great move. An ECHL ticket is a lot cheaper than an AHL ticket. The access to the players for the fan base is much better than even the AHL. When the AHL fan base access to players is so much better than the NHL is. So I think you'd have a close-knit community that would be tied to it. And I think it would work. I really do. But, I think those are decisions that I think are still going to come into play. But, I think you need this the AHL side of the organization to build. And then with the coming of guys like Yzerman, Nelson, Finley, Berg, all these kids that are going to be ready to come up in the next 12 or 24 months to the organization and start playing in the A. I think it's a great place to do it in because they'll have the confidence, they'll have a crowd behind them, and that's going to spark the players. And if that sparks the players, that's going to spark their play, and that's going to give them a chance to get to the big leagues if something happens on the big club.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out, but hopefully, at least for this year, we'll start to see some better results in Bridgeport, both on the ice and at player development, which is obviously going to come into play, as you alluded to. Gary, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find your podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, sir. I am part of a crew of 3 that do Isles Talk. It's on YouTube on Wednesday nights usually at 8 p.m. I believe we'll be on at 8 p.m. this week. You can also go onto Isles Talk on Facebook or on X, where we also broadcast a show from there as well. We're crossing our fingers. A few weeks back, we had Shane Malloy from Hockey Prospects, who talked about the draft and everything else that's going on. We're going to try to get him back on tomorrow to talk about a recap of the draft itself, because Paul, my co-host, is very draft centric. So we're going to get into that. So hopefully you can check us out. And on social media, I am at IslesMet63, which shows for my love of my baseball team and my hockey team. And yeah, you can probably guess what the other number is, but we'll leave that out.
All right. Well, thanks, Gary, so much. Great to have you here. And I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no offseason. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. By the way, if you have a question, a comment, a topic you'd like to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. If you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. You could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you anytime. Everydayers, we're back tomorrow. We will continue our player-by-player insight into all of the Islanders' 2025 draft picks, and we'll have the latest news, notes, and happenings. Maybe, just maybe, a Maxim Siplikov agreement could happen at any time. We'll keep our fingers crossed, as Gary is doing. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks so much for listening to and watching the Locked On Islanders podcast. And, of course, let's go Islanders.
LGI, baby.